So, are you guys curious to hear Stephen King's top 10 movie adaptations as of 2009?
Is Children of the Corn on the list?
It is not, but I'll read you what he says because he does like an intro to each of the movies that he's talked about in this book.
Okay.
I would love it.
I'm reading from the Stephen King Goes to the Movie anthology that was published in 2009. So his top 10 adaptations are, as of 2009,
Okay.
Apt Pupil. These are alphabetical.
I forgot that was his.
Apt Pupil, Cujo, Dolores Claiborne, 1408,
Wait, which Dolores Claiborne? The miniseries one?
the Kathy Bates one. I don't think there is another one
Oh, okay, never mind.
that I know of.
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of something else.
1408,
Okay,
The Green Mile,
that makes sense.
Misery,
That also makes sense.
The Mist,
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he loves the ending of The Mist. He thinks it's better than what he wrote, which I think is wild.
The Shawshank Redemption, Stand By Me, Storm of the Century.
Really?
He actually published this book. The forward is to Frank Darabont.
I was going to say, I had a feeling Darabont and Reiner were going to show up on that once he likes the
I mean, I think that list will help remind dear listeners what a fecund mind is Stephen King. He
I'm sorry,
produces
Fecund?
fecund. He produces so much.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just prodigious.
$40 word bringing to the table.
Oh, well, sorry about that. But I wasn't trying to be fancy pants. I was just saying he makes a lot of story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lots and lots.
There's a Simpsons joke about this, right?
I think
Like
so.
King A through L, or in the joke.
And what variety of kinds of stories he
tells.
tells, and tells well.
Totally.
All right. There's actually a really pretty sentence in there I like. All right. So this is his kind of reflection on Children of the Corn, the movie.
Okay.
The movie version is a kind of avatar of 70s horror movies. Even the spilled blood looks ready to snort coke and disco at the drop of a Bee Gees tune.
Yeah, baby.
And it has a line in it, not in the story you will notice, that my kids still giggle over. Outlander, we have your woman. But come on, it's not so bad. To me, it had a Wickermanish feel. The first Wicker Man, the good one. And Linda Hamilton, who would go on to Terminator glory, certainly gives it her all.
Sure.
Yet sometimes giving one's all is not enough. Sometimes the story is better simply because one's imagination is never on a budget. I think the written version is spookier because the corn is spookier. On film, it just looks like corn. On film, Corn is never going to give Dracula a run for his money. One other note. Children of the Corn has generated more awful sequels than any other story in my oeuvre. There's Children of the Corn 2, 3, and 4, at least. Possibly more. I eventually lost count.
There are more.
If my internet connection weren't down as I write this, I'd check and see if there wasn't even a Children of the Corn in space. I almost think there was. The only one I was really rooting for was Children of the Corn meet Leprechaun. I wanted to hear that little leprechaun guy shouting, "Give me back my corn," in his cute little Irish accent.
That's fun. Outlander. Give me back McLaurin. Outlander.
Outlander, I have your bucket of gold. Outlander.
I'll trade you a bucket of gold for a pot of corn.
God, I want to see if I can find this sentence because I really thought it was cool. Let me see. Do.
As the fluttering of pages flickers,
Wow.
the narrator comes in.
I should have. I meant to highlight it or mark it.
Searched desperately for the page, and as he looked, he came to realize he's got so
Here it
many
is.
things. But he found it.
It says they might have been dancing there on the Noonstruck Road with the boy's corpse at their feet. I like that Noonstruck. Mm-hmm. I like that
Moonstruck is
subversion.
good.
Yeah, that's a good word.
The imagery, because the Moonstruck evening, moon,
Yeah.
yeah, it has a different picture when you think of that. But Noonstruck,
Moonstruck.
I like that twist on it.
The terrifying reality of broad daylight.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. That's good.
Yep.
Very cool. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Good Trash Honorcast. We gather around a table. We discuss the films you'll never discuss in a film studies course. And, of course, as you may have realized, today's film, close to Hemingford, perhaps Hemingford home, is The Children of the Corn. We'll be talking about it. I am still Dustin.
I'm still Arthur.
I am still Dalton, and Dustin has not alluded to this yet, but this is the start of a whole cult thing we're doing, right?
Yes, we are starting a new marathon for May. It is called Welcome to the Family, where we're going to be looking at cult films. Now, not films under the radar, not seen by very many people, but movies about cults.
Yes.
It'll be a good time.
I love me some cultishness. So,
Probably spooky, too.
Good times
You would.
for all. In case you're tuning in for the first time, dear listener, we want to warn you, though, this is an analysis show, not a review show, and that does mean we are going to spoil the film. We'll review it, too, but we're going to spoil the film, and we'll do that eventually. And we'll give you a bit of a reprieve. If you listen and get interested and don't want to be spoiled upon it, you can come back towards the end. This is what it looks like. Thumbs up, thumbs down reviews, which are, again, very, very spoiler easy. Then we get into a little mental exercise we call expanding the syllabus, which might involve the gentlest of spoilers and perhaps some big spoilers of films of the orbiting, surrounding stellar constellations of these particular movies, and based on what that syllabus looks like.
Wow, bars. You thought he was going to get stuck there, but he didn't.
Yeah, well, you know.
He pulls it out once in a while.
He knows what he's doing.
And then finally we get down to business, and that business is analysis, and that's when all spoiler bets are off, so therefore there lies thy warning, dear friends. So, without any further ado, Mr. Arthur Gordon, voice of the synopsis. Can we hear that synopsis, please?
Can we hear that cinema, please?
Can we hear that cinema, please?
On a cross-country trip to Seattle, Vicky and Bert find themselves in the cornfields of Nebraska. After an incident on the road, they make their way to Gatlin for help. But the streets are empty, and the only thing lurking in the corn is danger.
And Needlebog is goblin spelled backwards.
Every time
You
they
don't piss on hospitality.
you cannot piss on
I
hospitality.
won't allow it, Dalton.
I know you won't. You've
Not
thrown
in
me-
my house.
Yeah, you've thrown me over my shoulder and over your shoulder and put me to bed without dinner many times. I know this. Every time I saw the sign Gatlin, my brain filled in Gatlinburg, which was
That's
just
funny.
I was just thinking about the third verse of A Boy Named Sue. It's just about
Yeah.
the boy named Sue going to Gatlinburg to get drunk, and then,
Yeah.
then he fights his dad. That's what I thought about the whole movie, which makes sense because it is about fighting your parents a little bit.
A little bit. That and, good times, good times. All right, well, there you go. That is the movie. Let's do our best to review this thing. Dalton, do you like Children of the Corn, and why, or more likely, why not?
It turns out there's a lot of hours of this film being talked about over in the movie podcast circuit. I was just, I like to every once in a while when we're talking about a movie see what discourse there is about one, and this one's been covered. I listened to a little bit of Psycho Analysis, which is a horror therapy podcast.
fun.
Yeah, it's a fun title, right? But they talked about this, and one of the hosts. It's funny you mentioned, Arthur, that or not mentioned. It's funny you read that selection. In that selection, you read about the Children of the Corn adaptation. It's funny that King landed on the cocaine-ness because one of the hosts kind of points out, like, man, older King, like cocaine era King, is just that he's going to kill everybody. Which it is funny that he sees that through line from his horror, his kind of his more Bachman side of his brain. Connecting through to this adaptation, because I definitely noticed it. I mean, it's 1984 release, but it feels like it's 1979 in a pretty big way. For better and worse, I think. I think there are times when the sort of low-budget trappings of this film really work in its favor. Kind of gives it that... the camp is nice, but it's not even the camp that helps it out. It is sort of the smallness of it lends it an air of reality at times. And while I think King is right to say, your imagination has no budget, that definitely helps for sure. But there are times where I found the low budgetness of this very, very charming. What I did not find charming was basically any word that anybody said, unfortunately.
Correct.
Both in terms of acting and scripting. Obviously, Linda Hamilton does her, as King points out, does her best to shoulder this movie across the finish line. And, it kind of works out okay. That Isaiah kid's fun. I mean, Isaiah and Malachi are what you came
Isaac?
for.
Yeah.
Is it?
Isaac.
That's right. I am just saying your child's name. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, it is Isaac.
There probably is a Jeremiah
There's
and an
gotta be.
Isaiah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And
Everybody's
there's
got
Lamentations. That poor kid.
Yeah, Isaac and Malachi are fun, right? I mean, I like how spooky they are, and that'll get you through 90 minutes, right? When he first showed up in the opening massacre scene, I did call him an Arya Stark looking ass, and I stand by that.
I can see that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird that the central mystery of the novel or the short story. I haven't read the short story, but I'm aware that the lead characters are kind of given the
Agency?
not agency, POV.
Yeah.
We don't learn any of what's gone on in Gatlin until later in that short story, I guess, which, of course, in the film, we know within 5 minutes. I don't know. It's a weird choice. I don't know. if the movie's better or worse for it. I just know that it struck me as odd for the entire runtime. It is unnerving, though. It is probably the single scariest moment of the film is that opening, which is very real and very jarring and very intensely shot. Puts you there, mentally speaking. It gets you scared. And it just kind of falls apart after that. I don't know, man. It's kind of a boring movie. I'm glad it's only 90 minutes. Everything that was done here was done better elsewhere, I guess, both before and after. Definitely gave me some Midsommar vibes for sure at times. The folk art, especially. I don't know. I'm excited to talk about this movie, right? Like, I think there's interesting things here, both with religion and intergenerational conflict. All of that stuff I think is going to be fun and interesting to talk about. It's just too bad the movie's not that fun or that interesting. The score's pretty groovy. I think the music's fun. It definitely falls into the Ghost camp. Last week we talked about Ghost being one of those movies where when the cops show up 10 minutes after the movie ends, it's going to be a real awkward conversation. This definitely has that problem. Because don't they still have the dead kid in their trunk from the very beginning of the movie?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. We'll talk more about Dr. Burt running over a child. We are trying to keep it spoiler light. But that happens early in the film. I don't know. I'm very curious to hear what you guys thought about it because, it didn't really do a whole lot for me. I think there's some fun sneaking and running bits towards the third, into the second act, start of the third. But overall, it's kind of a snooze fest, which is one of the worst things a horror movie can be.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Dalton Stewart. Mr. Arthur Gordon, what say you regarding The Children of the Corn?
Yeah, it's bad. It really is. I do think there are some good ideas. I do think there are some interesting concepts on the table. The premise itself, I think, is a solid idea. I think the short story has potential for a good movie. I think that there's visually a couple I can't remember. There are a couple of interesting shots that I thought maybe some of the running through the corn sequences, things like that. And some of the production design is pretty cool. Like when you see some of the cars filled with corn husks and things like that, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So I think some of that stuff kind of sets the tone, but I think you're right. I think there's just not enough there to kind of make it scary. Outside of that opening sequence, which I think is really well done, other than the narration, I think to your point, setting this from the kid's point of view in the town kind of hurts because the point of view, the narration's really uninteresting, and I think that's just I think child actors have come a long way since 1984, and I think that's part of that is the child actors aren't great outside of probably Isaac
who are adults. Isaac is 23, 24 when they make this, and Malachi's 17 or 18.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I looked it up. He's got a disorder.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Exactly.
Well, that would explain why he's
more
mature than
but again, even Malachi, I think he's 19 for reals when they shoot it. Yeah.
That checks out. So I think that kind of hinders it, and I think the other idea is and I wasn't able to put my finger on it quite, but I think reading the short story it did. I feel like without any sort of kind of relational conflict of any nature between Vicky and Bert, to really drive some of those moments stronger, I think hinders the film. And then once they get to, Gatlin, it's really probably 40 minutes of them just running around an empty town with nothing happening.
Uh-huh.
And I think that really hinders it as well. I think there's just so much convention at play in the script that it really slows it down from doing anything interesting or really challenging with the premise.
The text itself is the short story's got them fighting a ton, right?
Yeah, they're on the verge of splitting up or divorcing.
Gotcha.
In the short story. And here, there's she has a moment in the hotel at the very beginning where he says something and walks away, and she just kind of sighs, and but there's not really anything beyond that. I feel like they've got a pretty decent relationship.
Mad she couldn't get laid.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah,
you gotta get on the road.
Yeah,
she's annoyed. So outside of that, they seem to have a pretty good relationship. Everything's going well for them, and I don't think. And I'm going to get into this more in my syllabus, kind of my preoccupation there. So, all in all, though, I think it's bad. I think that. It could have been better, and I didn't really so much mind the third act stuff. Some of the special effects stuff they do, I think, holds up okay for what it is.
Yeah,
there's a kind of a charm to that, but
I like that stuff.
All in all, yeah, it's just too much of a mess for me.
Now, you had seen this before, right?
Yeah, I think I can never remember if I've seen this Village of the Damned, but I had seen this before, and I remembered about halfway through, like, yeah, that's the one.
Gotcha.
So,
Dustin, what about, again, this was I didn't mention it earlier. This was first time watch.
First time watch for me. I've been not avoiding it, but I just hadn't gotten to it.
Sure.
I do love King and I do love horror, so it's stuff that I dig. But the movie is kind of a mess, and we've already talked about the sort of cinematic problems of it insofar as dialogue and screenwriting are, just lousy. Do what I say because I said so, kind of stuff.
you mean Outlander? We Have Your Woman isn't winning an Oscar?
No, it's not.
I love Outlander. That's so
Outlander's great. Interloper's great. They're great things to yell.
Yeah, the Interloper, the Outlander, and so there are those sort of problems with it. And as you've mentioned, there are some significant pacing issues with moving the storyline. I mean, a short story is sort of ideal for adaptation into a 90-minute film, generally speaking. But in this case, for whatever reason, they've got real lazy there as they find their way finally into Gatlin. Now, I think another issue with it is the movie seems to me to be two different movies. And it may be because of my vague distraction, but I don't get any indication that there actually is something in the corn until we see the Tremors thing rolling around there towards the end, right?
It truly is the most Stephen King thing for there to turn out to be some sort of psychic malevolence that's behind all of this, right? Because you're absolutely right. There is a version of this movie that is just about Isaac the Tiny Psycho.
Which I guess is I'm doing a spoiler thing kind of early when I do this. But
this movie's like almost 30 years old, 40 years old. I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't think
it's almost
anybody's gonna
40
give a
years old, I should say.
Ooh, boy.
But there is the He Who Walks in the Rose. There is a thing, and once it appeared and arrived, I got all kinds of sort of dairy creature kind of eldritch god thing kind of senses, and that's fine and it's fun and it's interesting. But up until that point, it is just a story of a religious mania that has descended upon this group of young people and has caused them to kill their parents and set up this sort of weird Lord of the Flies society, and that's really interesting as an idea, but what we get from it is not very nuanced. I mean, it seems to be, in some ways, a critique of versions of Christianity, but it is so vague and bizarre. The score is good, but the score is so Catholic. And so it seems to be that if you're going to interrogate this sort of religious life, and I think that interrogation is good and useful.
Yeah, it seems pointed at that 80s silent majority type, the birth of the religious right type stuff.
But it's got
its wires crossed.
Yeah, it's not nuanced anyway, and
No.
it's frustrating as a watch there for me. And then for it to finally be there is a thing, and this is kids don't know how to process this thing existing, and they take what tools they've got and they sort of use it to make something. That's very cool, but I guess I need more before that. And I assume that in the story, stuff's spooky pretty quick. As far as whatever's going on with the kiddos, maybe the adults don't realize why or what's happening there, but that's troublesome to me. Again, and some of those sort of the child actor performances are not great. Gas station man. There's a word for this.
Oh, the
Harbinger.
The Harbinger.
Our Harbinger is man.
Classic Harbinger.
Well, a cliche Harbinger.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
The gas station.
Yeah. I mean, worse than classic.
every way, yeah.
Classic's good. Cliche is bad.
Yeah, that's fair.
And this
He's
is
great though. That's all I'm saying. He's great.
It's fun, but also, gosh,
we've been there.
I'm worn out. And so I did find the movie in a lot of ways to be kind of exhausting. And that there are better movies poking around the edges of it really frustrated me more. I would rather it would just be a bad Troll 2 kind of movie.
Yeah.
And just be this janky sort of, and another thing happens, and it's just what? I would prefer that than this sort of crackling, sparkling delights of an edge of a real kind of religious interrogation film, a real interesting sort of what do kids do when they don't know how to handle or understand something, wanting to kill your parents kind of stuff. That would have been that would have been much more interesting. And that crackling energy at the edges just frustrated the sort of mealy mouth middle that I found. And so I did find it to be a pretty frustrating watch because of that. So I have a pretty low view, as well as it seems do the rest of my co-hosts.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, with that said, I guess we move on into our next little section of the show, which is an exercise we call Expanding the Syllabus. Arthur, can you tell the dear listener what Expanding the Syllabus is all about?
One of these days I'm going to write down definition so I don't have to think about it. But it is a thought experiment.
I like it better this way.
Yeah, I bet you like to torture us. That's fine. This is a thought experiment where we are assembling the bones of a course syllabus, maybe film or film parallel, or film adjacent, I should say. And we pick the texts and the movies and the essays or media that students would view alongside the primary text, which is the movie of the week, and bring a little bit of analysis to it and how we would build a course.
Very cool. That is exactly what that is. So what does your syllabus look like there, Arthur?
I was really strict, especially, okay, so again, spoiler alert for a 40-year-old film, but the kind of final shot of this are
It's not 40
Bert
years
and
old.
Vicky. It's, 38?
6.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
4 years we're off?
Yeah, it was-
2 years we're off?
4 years.
Because it's 21?
It's
3 years.
It's 36.
It's 37.
Well, I guess 37. We're going to turn 37 this year.
Just making him feel older.
Yeah,
so it
I
sounds
knew
weird.
exactly what was
I see
happening.
what you're doing there.
Yeah, I've been watching the sparks fly. from
Spoiler
over
alert
here.
for this 37-year-old movie.
Your mom.
He's dead. Thanks. I'll celebrate Mother's Day in quiet next week.
Oh gosh. It got dark.
Anyway, the final shot of this film is of Bert and Vicky and the two children that aren't possessed or crazy within the community, or who haven't given into the religious fervor, I should say, not necessarily crazy. And it's kind of alluded to that there may be some sort of adoption or faux adoption taking place, and they've become a full family unit by the end of this movie.
Couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
The
day,
80s,
a week.
An 80s, the great time when you could just find a random kid and say, you know what, you can just stay here and you'll
We'll take
be
you on
mine
for a
now.
couple of weeks, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Like a dog.
Yeah.
Don't
So
pick
I was-
up strays, guys. Don't pick up strays.
You don't want to do it.
I was really struck, though, by the idea of horror and the family unit and how those kind of work together, and that kind of metaphor that's pretty prevalent through a lot of horror. I think a lot of supernatural horror specifically, where those family tensions give way to the either malevolent energy within the narrative, or at least kind of have that heavy symbolic connection to what's going on, kind of a metaphor for the relationship. And I think I would start with a short story. It's 40 pages, and like I mentioned earlier,
They'll
first
never read it.
yeah, they probably won't. But the first probably 15 to 20 pages of this feels like just Bert and Vicky arguing.
Great.
And I think her name, I don't even remember if her name was Vicky in the short story. For some reason, that doesn't sound right, but I could be wrong.
Bert and Bertha.
Wouldn't that be? No, it is Vicky. Okay. But anyway, they're at odds. They're actually traveling cross country to save their marriage under the guise of going to see her brother, I believe. And I like the idea of this. And there's kind of a subversion. I'm going to spoil this short story here in a second. The idea in a lot of these scenarios is once the couple or the family are put through these trials, they come out the other side happy and a family unit, like we see in the movie. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of in that, I feel like, nihilist period of King's writing where nobody comes out alive, which I think is the more interesting ending, that Bert and Vicky are both killed and taken. And I feel like, obviously, kind of the headspace of where King was at the time, probably the kind of darkness he was in as a writer and a person with his addictions and his struggles. But I think for a horror story, that's the much more bleak, nihilistic ending that kind of shows, in conjunction with the movie, the two kind of ways you can go with this sort of metaphor and symbolism in horror. So I think I would start with a short story, kind of parse that out, because I think it is an interesting dichotomy with what is shown in the movie. From there, I'd go with the Babadook and the struggles of the single mother and the kind of problem child and that relationship and those tensions and how that manifests with the titular Babadook. From there, I want to work in The Conjuring 2 and Annabelle Comes Home. The Conjuring 2 spends a lot of time as Ed and Lorraine go to Britain and England to work with a family there who are dealing some hauntings, and there's a lot of kind of struggle there. But also the kind of fruition comes in Annabelle Comes Home is the tension and struggle that this has all had, that their life has had on their own family unit with their daughter. And I like where Annabelle Comes Home brings that. And I think that's an interesting, piece of this. Ed and Lorraine are kind of leading this life, fighting ghosts or whatever. And we don't see the effects of that on their family unit until Annabelle Comes Home, where we kind of see that attack on the home. And I think that's a fun way to go with that.
Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga had no clue that when they signed him for The Conjuring, that was going to end up being 4 or 5 movie commitment.
I mean,
keeping them well into middle age.
It's somehow become the strongest Warner Brothers extended universe.
Yeah, weird.
And I think there's something really fascinating about that as a study as well.
Yeah, Pictures is strange.
Yeah. From there, I want to jump into Mike Flanagan. I want to talk about The Haunting of Hill House, the series he did for Netflix, which is all about family trauma and how that's manifested in the supernatural. I also want to talk about Jurassic Park, which echoes what we see in the movie we're talking about, Children of the Corn, with that kind of construction of the family unit. There we have the kind of resilient father with Alan Grant and the kind of family unit he makes with Tim and Lex and Sadler, Ellie. I think that's just kind of a more modernized parallel of what they're trying to attempt in Children of the Corn. I think it works much better because of the character. We're never really led to believe that either Bert or Vicky are anti-kids or anti-parent. There's nothing about that in their character. And I think that's also a flaw within the script without having that kind of conflict. Why should we care if they adopt these two children?
There's no character conflict in the entire movie, which is one of the big problems.
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of discuss how popular this trope is, I want to actually move into the Christian realm and do House, co-written by Ted Decker and Frank Peretti, which takes the same trope but kind of applies it in a spiritual sense, which I think just kind of shows the popularity of this idea. And then I would end this with a little gothic horror, and we'd talk Crimson Peak and Del Toro and that weird messed up family dynamic within that film, and wrap it up there, I think. But I was really just struck by the idea of the horror and the family unit. And I think this would just be a section within a horror probably studies class or something like that. But that's where I would go with it.
Very cool, very cool. I like that a lot, Mr. Arthur Gordon. Well, hey, Dalton, what would you do if you were going to make a syllabus built around Children of the Corn? Why would you do such a thing, and how would you get it done?
All right. Well, I could have talked about cults, but we're going to be doing a whole cult thing. I wanted to talk about religious trauma, but I think I'm going to have time to do that during this miniseries. So I thought a little bit harder. I didn't want to waste that one with Children of the Corn. So I'm going to read you a quote you're probably familiar with, but we'll tease out here in a second. The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They show disrespect for elders and love chatter in place of exercise. Children are now tyrants, not the servants of their households. They no longer rise when elders enter the room. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers. What a word, tyrannize.
1783.
Is
George Washington.
Well, and here's who it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be Plato quoting Socrates. You've probably heard this one before. Somebody's probably fooled you with this. It's not a real quote. It's been peddled around for a long time, but it does come from Kenneth John Freeman in his 1907 Cambridge dissertation. Some people have done the homework on, okay, how did this big fake Socrates quote enter our popular lexicon? How has it become kind of this ingrained example of people have always been bitching about the youth? And so I will read a little bit about what Kenneth Freeman had to say, because he was studying. Do I have the name of the dissertation? Ooh, I didn't pull it. Sorry, Kenneth. You've been dead for a while, though, so I don't think you're going to mind. But anyways, a survey of ancient Greece and attitudes in ancient Greece. But here's what he actually had to say. The counts of and this is again him just kind of summarizing what, after reading a lot of texts from the era, what the complaints about the youth were. The counts of the indictment are luxury, bad manners, contempt for authority, disrespect to elders, and a love for chatter in place of exercise. Children began to be the tyrants, not the slaves of their households. They no longer rose, yada, 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 repeating the things we already said before. And committed various offenses against Hellenistic tastes, such as crossing their legs. So again, he's just talking about what the quote kind of got internalized and attributed to a famous ancient Greek person, because, that's how quotes live on, is through misattribution. Why are we talking about this quote that gets bandied about? Well, because I think the class is going to be, the kids are all right. Question mark? Yeah, of course. Generational cohorts and their invention. So we'll be talking about generational conflict, this incessant need we have throughout human history, once one generation reaches a certain age, to start bad-mouthing the people younger than them and probably ignoring the people older than them. I think Dustin as a younger Xer and Arthur and I as older millennials, we're officially not relevant in the culture. I'm very excited about it, frankly. But I think it is extremely interesting that we can't, as a species, seem to break loose of this thing we've got, right? Because the current online discourse is how Zoomers and millennials are supposed to be mad at each other about how I guess we have bad genes or something. I don't know. It's not important. Yeah, I know. Well, look, who cares? The point is, though, it is a thing we seem hell-bound and determined to do to each other. And I think this movie, when it is interesting, it gets at that, right? It gets at this idea that there is some inherent fear of destruction from the younger generation, and likewise there is a pull towards destruction felt by the younger generation. They must burn down the thing that is propping them up, because
Paging Dr. Freud,
paging Kylo Ren, whoever, page anybody. We need to get everybody down to the OR right now. So some of the films we might talk about: The Bad Seed, of course. And we need to talk about Kevin. So we'll talk about some films where there is an explicitly like murderous minor, and kind of deal with that, unpacking both the fact and the fiction of murderous children, because obviously kids be doing murders just like anybody else, and we got to talk about that. It's a very real concern, especially in the early 21st century. Happens a lot, more than it should. But we'll also look at things like Assassination Nation and Rebel Without a Cause and Breakfast Club, Bend It Like Beckham, these tensions between the youth and the older that are generally being done by the older generation, right? There is this assumption on the older generation's part that it's the younger generation causing this turmoil, when clearly it is them being too stuck in their ways. And I think all of those films, in one way or another, kind of come at that question in an interesting way. I think we might also look at the Noah Baumbach movie, While We're Young, which I think people have... there's interesting discourse around that movie, both pro and con. But, about 10 years out, it feels way too late, obviously, to be talking about the Gen X millennial divide. But I think, I haven't actually seen the movie, but I've always been interested in the discourse around it, because people have been talking about it for a while now. But outside of the media representation, we'll look at some of the development of generational cohorts. We'll look at the social science of these things. Spoiler alert: it's bad. It's pop sociology. It means nothing. It's total bullshit. I hate to break it to you, but we've been just started making it up after World War II. We just decided we needed to put every past generation of people into a little box of 15 to 20 years and say that defines their life experience, which of course it doesn't. Human beings are far more complicated than that. All you can really tell about a group is maybe some demographic information, right? And you can talk about their historical moment. That's really all a generational cohort can give you. So maybe we can look at, how this gets created, why it gets created. Is there some, compelling social psychological need to be able to categorize each other according to experience and wisdom, yada, yada, yada. So I think that's the class, and I think maybe here in a second, when we get down to business, we can talk a little bit more about what Children of the Corn has to say about those issues.
Sounds great. I'm excited to do just that. Thank you, Mr. Dalton Stewart. So what I would do with my syllabus is, I don't know what class it would go into. I was thinking a lot about the Gothic is what I want to touch on here, and a particular version of the Gothic, and that is the fear of wilderness.
Okay.
And of the rural. And as this movie definitely has a lot of that sort of urbanite versus the country kind of stuff going on with it.
Sure.
And in my version of American Lit 1 that I teach now, we focus on Gothic literature for that. And this would be kind of part of a class like that, but something more in the realm of American studies.
Yeah, you're trying to get some Deliverance in there?
Well, I mean, no, Deliverance is not what I would use, because I'm really thinking about the supernatural bit for this module.
Gotcha.
That I think in the expanded version of the course, absolutely. Something like Deliverance would definitely play into it. But I was thinking about how the wilderness in the sort of early colonial mind is the place that is haunted by witches, which are those who've gone wrong, gone bad within the community, and of course by Native Americans and their various hoodoos, and how those are frightening places. And so, but there's been an evolution where Corn itself becomes one of those places in which those things are haunted. Your Jeepers Creepers or Signs or, any version of that sort of aesthetic. And I read sort of a Reddit thread meme on Facebook years ago about how, the Native American sort of fear became in Western or in the American mind became a place of guilt, that we had desecrated some part of their culture. We'd failed to acknowledge that erasure, and we were being punished for our sins, is sort of how that supernatural Wendigo or whatever that we engaged.
Yeah, corn didn't become edible on its own,
Right, but we'd find that. But when it became more and more modernized and contemporized and became monocultures, that the fields are not natural in any way, because that's not how nature works. And it became an instrument of colonialization, and it became our own. What we've sown into the land has also made us sick. And so part of that, in the Children of the Corn, is these worst versions of American Protestantism that is part of what's poisoning this community. And it comes out of the corn, out of our monoculture, rape and I guess domination of the land, subjugation, domination of the land for our own agricultural, economic purposes.
Which requires the narrative that there is an untamed and unsettled land, right? Which of course is very far from the truth. When there's all this great evidence of early botany, basically, before Europeans get here.
Right. So what I would do then is look at some of those investigations of those various sort of perspectives on wilderness. And I think M. Night Shyamalan's The Village is an interesting sort of proto-quasi-colonial kind of view, though that movie is more complicated than just that, and what's going on with it, and the way in which those woods are haunted. David Edgar's The Village,
great one.
Which I think is another examination of the same kind of ideas, and then going on into Jeepers Creepers, Signs, and Children of the Corn, and looking at that monoculture, again, sort of post-colonization, haunting of the land, and just to watch that with a handful of students and talk about those various issues as they voice themselves in different ways.
Obligatory reminder that you should steal Jeepers Creepers, because the director is a real creeper.
There you go. So yeah,
Arthur just gave me a really knowing look. Something else. You deserve to see Arthur's beautiful eyes, listeners, what I'm saying.
That absolutely, at all times. So there you go, dear listener. Your syllabus just got much longer. Let's get down to business. And that business is, as always, analysis. You began to punt a football through the goalpost, Dalton. Pick it back up, and let's talk more about that.
Which one? The generational divide? Yeah, I don't know. We talked about this... Well, we talk about it all the time, honestly. I think I recall us really getting into it once upon a time. We talked Wrath of Khan. We talked about some Gen X Boomer divide stuff there. But this is a topic that comes up on the show a lot because, well, our stories cover this a lot. It's one of the oldest stories, right? I mean, especially if we're talking about the so-called Western canon. We can look at the stories of the Greek gods that just assume this fraughtness in the paternal, or not the paternal, the parent-child relationship, although because of its tendency towards deutery, you could say just the parent or the paternal relationship, the patriarchal relation. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole of the ancient world, right? That was kind of their jam, and I think that being their jam kind of informs a lot of that assumption in Western thought of the parent-child relationship being an adversarial one, right? This dumb shit that I just so happen to father has come to steal all the stuff that I built for myself is really a loud theme throughout a lot of the Greek tragedies, and I think it goes on to inform our storytelling. I don't know why I said storytelling like that, but our storytelling tradition, because all of our stories grow out of the early Hellenistic society, which of course led to the culture of Rome, which led to the rest of European history in some ways. I think all of these things stack on top of each other to just keep kicking the can down the road of which generation's fault is it that everything sucks. And I think I don't know that Children of the Corn really offers us anything in a way of a remedy to that. I think it acknowledges that narrative is a little broken, though. And good for Children of the Corn, because there's not a lot that this movie does well, but I think that is one of the things that it gets at, is this narrative of one group supplanting another is not necessarily something that has to continue. I don't know. The film doesn't really get anywhere with that, though, other than, this sort of, what is his name? John...
Who? Bert?
Judd. Bert? That's his name.
Who?
Bert.
The main guy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bert. Such a forgettable name.
Right. Well, he's such a forgettable character.
He truly is. And we can talk more about this line when we inevitably get to talking about, the exploration of religion in this movie. But Bert's little soliloquy or whatever about, true religion being something that has to have love and compassion. Without that, it's a lie. That's something, right? And I think that kind of speaks to that tradition of stories that say, no, God's trying to kill you, and God is your dad, and your dad's trying to kill you. You better kill him first. I don't know. I don't think it's super useful for anybody, honestly. And it's good to interrogate that and see where that fails to really provide us anything to think about productively.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you could think about, what is that crazy Luke Perry TV series where all the kids or all the adolescents, pre-adolescents don't die of a disease and everybody else that's an adult just dies and gets wiped out? As a television series.
Oh, yeah.
Perry?
Luke Perry's in it, and
It's
seemed
based
like,
on a novel.
Malcolm Jamal Warner, I think.
It was on Fox, right?
When would it have been?
This is like 2 years ago, I think, is when it
it's like-
premieres.
Oh, Luke passed away.
No, 90s, yeah.
Oh, this is something else then.
Yeah,
You're
this-
thinking of a different thing
Yeah.
Okay.
than I thought you were thinking of.
I don't know. We're going to find it real fast.
R.I.P. to Luke, though.
Night Vision? No.
No.
Oz? No. It's the
No.
prison one. Jeremiah?
Jeremiah, that's it.
Wow. Way to recall something.
Yeah, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Nice. It was a
Wow,
Showtime
yeah.
series.
Oh, good pulls, Dustin. Nobody saw Jeremiah
Apparently
on
not.
Showtime, so remind us what it's about a little bit.
Well, I don't remember much of it, but what I do recall is that for some reason there is some disease that ravages all the world, and if you have not yet gone through puberty, you're immune.
Gotcha. Your classic YA novel setup.
Yeah. And so it is, again, Lord of the Flies, but on a global scale in some sense. And, those stories do tend to be like wrecking with that and how, our parents broke the world and they made the disease. I think it's their fault that it's there, And so there's sort of an ecological disaster, kind of a climate change thing that's working at it, and its thematics there. But it is this idea that you gave me this terrible, terrible world, and now we have to deal with it. And so that sort of angst and anger does find its voice in various media.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I pulled Assassination Nation, because for that film's shortcomings and the continued weirdness of Levy's career, I think that film does a good job of interrogating that, right? Of the structures that tend to bully the younger generation for lack of a more sophisticated way to put it.
Right. And Westerns have been doing this for a long time. And
Sure.
there's always that sort of old man strength and old man wisdom and canniness that's going to really get you by, and I'll show you, young kid, what you're supposed to do. I was thinking a little bit as you were talking, though, about the weird way in which Children of Men provides a different kind of dialogue. And the sort of... again, in the same kind of way, some sort of disease has racked the planet, and now there are no more children. And the grief that provides. And that's an interesting counterpoint, because although there is this sort of tension where you see, again, John Wayne is always superior to some, snot-nosed kid in a Western, or our parents wrecked everything in the case of, say, a Jeremiah, that Children of Men provides a way in which our children are the future. Which is, again, cliche to say, but there's something really, really mournful about its tone in both the novel and in the film version by Almodovar. Almodovar? Yeah.
Almodovar. No, it's Cuarón.
Cuarón, yeah. I was like, one of the three amigos. I got the wrong one, sorry. But that, I think that's an interesting sort of interplay of there are other possibilities. And then, of course, the reestablishment of a nuclear family, like you were saying with Jurassic Park, and Zizek's sort of preoccupation with Spielberg's obscene fathers who finally kind of get it together by the end of a film. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything more to say about that other than there are these sort of weird tensions that are there. But I don't really see a lot of mourning of the missing parents. Every time they're gone, it's a good thing. And, yes, the world's a disaster. They didn't show us some things that we needed to be shown, but also they made this mess. I don't see it going the other direction very often in cinema. And that's probably because, adults make it.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, it's probably because all of these narratives about children are written by adults trying to remember what it was like to be a child, which is, something very, very difficult the further you get out from it, I think. Not that I'm saying we should have, a room full of 14-year-olds at typewriters trying to tell us what we should be talking about.
You never know.
It seems like a terrible idea.
Boy, does it. God, I'm picturing a room full of 14-year-olds right now. And it's the scariest thing I can picture. Truly. They're terrifying.
Yeah.
And that's what's so scary about them is they are going to kill us. Hopefully not literally, hopefully in a more metaphorical sense. But, I understand both Stephen King, probably, because, his kids are, they're born in the 80s, right? His kids definitely, I'm pretty sure his kids are not born when he's writing this. If they are, they're young.
Yeah.
So I can see why he wants to write a story like this whenever he does. I can see why, somebody thought this would be an interesting date night movie in 1983 when they were probably trying to sell the thing. It's bad, though. And I think that badness is we are putting more to the film's themes right now than the film really bought. Again, I didn't get to catch up the short story, but I can only assume it has a little bit more going on than the movie, right? Does it, Arthur? About, at the very least, like it just... Is it kind of a senseless murder of the parents with no real reason?
I don't think it really actually even gets into the murder of the parents.
Interesting.
I think the more interesting approach it does here, and I it's been a couple days since I read it, but that's not really a big point in the book. The only thing really alluded to it is that idea of being killed on their 19th birthday.
Okay.
That's that sacrificial thing. That's a big point here.
Okay.
It's really interesting because all these kids have given names, but they're changed. They take it upon themselves to change them into a more biblical name.
Interesting.
So there's like Richard, William, George, and they become Amos, Isaac, and Zephaniah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which, it kind of gets into that. It just kind of leads to a really interesting. Yeah. It kind of gives it a really fun little thing here. But the really doesn't get into that. It really kind of leaves things vague about what's going on in the town and what happened there. There does seem to be an illusion that there is something behind the corn and there is some sort of psychic malevolent force there. But we don't see anything as visually compelling as what's on the screen in the movie.
Yeah, I almost prefer it to be some thing that brings about a mania, and that we're sort of exploring that. It is the thing that's there already, but it manifests what already it has to work with.
Yeah,
right.
Which is, again, classic King stuff, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole deal with Pennywise and It, isn't it? I do think it's interesting it's very much Hollywood movie stuff to create an external force that is the source of evil that you can throw a Molotov cocktail at. I love that they're calling it gasohol.
Yeah, right. Well, that is a word that was being used.
It's just funny to think about.
Commonly then,
ethanol gasoline wasn't, everywhere. So it's its own cute little name.
Yeah, it's corn liquor gas.
This does put the creature into the clearing, actually.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, I'll read you this real quick.
Oh, please.
So he has stumbled upon. Okay, hang on. Okay, so this is him stumbling into the scene to find Vicky.
Okay.
Vicky, he whispered. Oh, Vicky, my God! She had been mounted on a crossbar like a hideous trophy. Her arms held at the wrists and her legs at the ankles with twists of barbed wire.
Yikes!
Her eyes had been ripped out. The sockets were filled with the moon flax of corn silk. Her jaws were wrenched open in a silent scream. Her mouth filled with corn husks.
Gross.
It jumps down a little bit. He sees the police chief. And,
the man in blue. Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
And then he says, that was when Bert heard it coming. Not the children, but something much larger, moving through the corn and toward the clearing. Not the children, no. The children wouldn't venture into the corn at night. This was the holy place, the place of he who walks behind the rows. Jerkily, Bert turned to flee. The row he had cindered the clearing by was gone. Closed up. All the rows had closed up. It was coming closer now, and he could hear it pushing through the corn. He could hear it breathing. An ecstasy of superstitious terror seized him. It was coming. The corn on the far side of the clearing had suddenly darkened as if a gigantic shadow had blotted it out. Coming. He who walks behind the rows. It began to come into the clearing. Bert saw something huge bulking up to the sky, something green, with terrible red eyes the size of footballs. Something that smelled like dried corn husk years in some dark born. He began to scream, but he did not scream long. Sometime later, a bloated orange harvest moon came up.
Goodness gracious.
That's a
me.
fun ending.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
And that's spooky as hell.
That's a better movie. Also, but yoinks.
Yoinks and Gadzooks. You know, it's hard to resist the pull of an eldritch being.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Absolutely.
How can
Yeah.
you not cut on your chest and give the blood to everyone and then, be murdered for your birthday? Right?
Yeah, yeah, happy birthday.
So I was going to see. So this came out in 1977 in Penthouse was when it was originally published. And then he collected it.
Great.
What?
Great. The 70s, man.
That's how he made his money, though. He was sending stories to Playboy and Penthouse and all those others to get these things published and make a check. It gets collected in Night Shift in 1978.
Okay.
Joe Hill was born in 1972.
Okay, so he's got a little 6-year-old run around.
And then Owen was born in 1977. So he had one on the way.
There you go.
And one had already came. And
Makes
I don't
perfect
know-
sense. Okay.
He has that third kid, I think, but I don't know. Naomi. I don't know when she was born. Joe is
Dustin-
obviously, I think, the eldest.
You're the only parent at the table.
Correct.
A parent to children without lots of fur and,
Four
lacking
legs.
opposable thumbs. What I don't know. Are you worried about the kids murdering you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, yeah, of course I am.
Yeah.
There definitely is this sort of bowing up kind of thing that happens, especially when you're a father of boys.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
So that's a
Trying to fight
thing.
your dad's a rite of passage, right?
I guess so.
And it's a rite of passage for your dad to not lay hands on you, I guess.
or well, anyway, sometimes it goes sideways.
Yeah, no, I've heard stories.
yeah.
I've got a couple of dads, and I heard a couple of fight stories.
Yeah. And I do think it is, the young bucks trying out the old bull kind of thing. I mean, that's part of it, I think. And just, I finally have some size and some strength of my own, and I want to test it, and I want to test it against the strongest thing I know, which is, that force of nature, which is father, right?
Sure.
And it is something, oddly Freudian, again, working in there, that just sort of, not in the Oedipal sense of, I want to bang my mom.
No, but in I got you, the sort of the cultural supplantation sense.
Right. Well, in the way in which, dad has been, or, the name of the father, the nom de pere, if you're going to go Lacanian with this particular psychoanalytical tag, and that the name of the father says, I have authority, you don't have authority. I'm in charge, you're not in charge. I have the rules, you don't have the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're getting to a place where you're like, I want to make my own rules, I want to make my own decisions. And so, in some sense, that father has to die. For you to feel a freedom to do that next thing, whatever it happens to be.
Which is interesting that we find the children of the corn, Los Chicos del Maíz, we find them doing something of a religious deconstruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've taken their Christian idols. Weird how into idolatry Christianity at large is. Well, with all the don't do it. There's so much don't do it in there. Anyway, it is interesting that they have now taken these Jesus and Mary portraits and turned them into corn monsters. It's one of the best bits of design in the movie.
Yeah, it's very, very
They
interesting.
look creepy as hell. They're awesome. Again, all of the religious folk art in this movie is it just kept blowing me away. I just kept thinking, man, this looks cool. It's very spooky, and it's one of the more effective things in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any there other than just the idea of religious deconstruction and reconstruction?
I mean, I don't know that there is a there because they are doing it, again, in reaction to this horrible thing that
Sure.
is, speaking apparently to Isaac, and clearly is speaking and eventually speaking through Isaac, which is the creepiest moment in the whole movie.
Pretty scary.
And that, if you find the encounter with the real, I'm very Lacanian today. If you found that encounter with the real, and your symbolic order no longer can symbolize that, you'll take the pieces of what you've got and reconstruct it around that real.
Totally.
And so that does seem to be what they're doing, is just adapting it to the more of what they've encountered, which is terrifying and really does, I think if you did it justice, creates a much more sympathetic Isaac and Malachi.
Yeah, sure.
But the movie fails to see that, because they're just sort of pure evil, manipulative, power hungry, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, those critiques, to see a different version of the movie in which Isaac is just, again, possessed of religious mania and his own egomania and using it to manipulate and control others. That critique of religion is powerful and good. But because it is so diffuse, it sort of fails in my mind. So I think there is less of a there because of that.
Yeah, we do get something interesting, I think, with Malachi trying to usurp Isaac, which is just kind of like classic cult dynamics. You've got the guy and you've got the muscle. Or the younger one,
lieutenant,
the David Miscavige. We don't live anywhere near a Scientology center. They're not going to chase us. We live in Oklahoma. We're fine. That's Psycho. He knew to be in line behind LRH and make sure to take over as soon as there was a chance to take over. And that is, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more in this cult marathon. That's how new religious movements carry on. That's how they go from being a cult to being religion.
Foundational, yeah.
That's all you got to do is just have a guy behind the guy.
Yeah.
And boom.
To carry on the...
Yeah, you got the thing. But it is interesting how so often, especially in cults that end in violence or are working their way up to a moment, an explosion of violence, there is almost always a figure within that pushing it, right? Saying that somebody that kind of gets that there's a game going on and they know that they can usurp. No, you don't have the voice of he who walks behind the rose. I've got the voice of he who walks behind the rose. And again, because we have an actual malevolent force, we don't get to do anything with that. But I found that moment where Isaac and Malachi are kind of arguing about what to do with Bert and, oh my God, Linda Hamilton.
Vicky.
God, they're just the most boring, generic, short names. Bert, when they're trying to decide what to do with Bert and Vicky, I don't know. Again, I don't know that there's a there, but I think at the very least, especially in 1984, we're not really talking about this. We've got a whole lot of cult drama coming up at the end of the 20th century, but we're not quite there yet. So I think it's interesting the film sees that and plays around with it a little bit.
I was just kind of wondering, my familiarity isn't really there quite as much as yours, I think, Dalton, but obviously I think this movie is one in a long line of, this was kind of peak Stephen King where everything he was doing was being optioned. But I was kind of wondering about this in light of the satanic panic and that kind of social fear of the children. So I didn't know if there was anything there.
Wow,
or
that's
where
a
it
good
would
point.
land.
Yeah, they're finding Dungeons and Dragons, and therefore they're getting motivated. Like, when again,
I just didn't know when those timelines would have.
No, this is peak. I mean, we're not quite there. I mean, because I think West Memphis 3, right, is probably
that's like 93, right?
Yeah, but and then the McMartin preschool stuff, that's like 85. I wish I knew off the top of my head. But
when did Sean Sellers kill his parents? The Oklahoma
don't know about
D&D kid.
Oh, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean it's just a double murder. I mean, so I mean it's obviously that's horrible and awful, but
yeah, I get why you backpedaled on that.
He's motivated by his you have the date?
Looks like 70s.
Okay.
Oh wait. On March 5th, 1986, Sellers killed his mother and stepfather.
Yikes! So just after this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we got the mid 90s again, kind of being. I feel like that's a moment where that's like the last gasp of this stuff, right? But I think early 80s, we're just getting moving forward with all the Michelle Remembers or whatever the name of that book is. The repressed memories of, we're planting the seeds for QAnon, baby. It's all going to come around. Don't worry, the corn will rise.
Right. QAnon is the boomers' fault. Yes.
You hard to blame. Look, there's a millennial behind that at the end of the day, right?
Well, of course there is.
Whatever that guy's name is. Who's going to bother to remember? I wish I watched part of the documentary. I can't remember his name.
But we create these, again, sort of mythologies. And what they do is they grow legs and they keep on going. I mean, there's a thing that Neil Gaiman talks about, interpretation of his stories and how they're like little children. And once you've got them raised and sent them out in the world, they do what they want. And these sort of cultural stories of the Satanic Panic, these cultural stories of, parents want to kill their children, like a rebel without a cause.
I'm sorry, it's Dune o'clock.
Yeah.
The Dune Messiah. I'm deep into Dune Messiah now. It's all about how the thing, whatever you want it to do, even if you have nefarious goals, it's gonna get away from you. Even if your goals are already bad, they'll get worse because you can't control a thing once you put it out into the world. It will take on a life of its own. And I think talking about the Satanic Panic and conspiracy theory thought, like it all goes back to that. Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is like the granddaddy of all conspiratorial anti-Semitic thought. Like all of this shit goes all the way back to that, which has been around for like 150 years at this point, a long time. I never bothered to internalize that date. But it's funny you went to Gaiman because there are so many different places that you can find. I don't even know what to call it. I was going to say trope, but it's not really a trope if it's a thing that happens in real life. It just is a fact of history, I guess.
Right.
A fact of human group behavior.
Well, I'm thinking about Nicholas Kazantzakis' Last Temptation of Christ and Scorsese's adaptation of it. One of the things that are among the temptations of Christ not to go through with the crucifixion and the establishing of this religion is that people are going to do some very, very bad things in your name. It doesn't mean, and I think Bert actually hits on that with that, again, sort of trite speech, is that you might lose the plot because you've got yourself so caught up in some of these weirdo details, and that if it doesn't have love and compassion, then it's not true. But that's what you get misguided on, and then you get it twisted. That is what happens with all the stories. That's what happens with all the sort of meta narratives. And Jean-Francois Lyotard says postmoderns are skeptical of meta narratives, and that's not really the case. It's just that we've pluralized our meta narratives. That everyone seems to still continue in a meta narrative, whatever. Make an adjective of meta narrative. We do that in that fashion, and yet they still, though they may have some good, kernel of basis there, they always seem to get twisted in the hands of humanity.
That's a difficult thing with doing anything as a group, right? Everybody's, oh gosh, I was trying to remember, it's not important what it comes from, but the long and the short of it is not everybody has the same idea about what's good. And that does unfortunately tend to cause some problems, especially if you've got two opposing groups working from the same meta-narrative.
Right.
Shit can get hairy pretty quick.
Right, and we all are swirling cauldrons of id. And,
yeah,
and finding ways to use this for those baser needs, whatever they happen to be.
Well, I think we're going to have lots of time to explore more of that in the coming weeks, I imagine.
Probably so.
Do we have anything Children of the Corn specific we want to go out on? Don't adopt lightly, I guess. Don't go to creepy old towns if somebody tells you they got religion and they don't cotton to outsiders. Stay clear. Listen to the Harbinger.
If the streets are empty, keep driving.
Good call. Good call.
Any other small town tips?
Get away.
Get away. just get out. Get out now.
Yep.
All right, well, let's render a verdict then on Children of the Corn. What do we say? Shelf or trash, Dalton? Go.
Nah, it's not important. No.
Moving on.
Get it out of here.
Thank you. What do you say, Arthur?
Yeah, it's just throw it in the compactor.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. If you're a king completist, I guess, but
Nah, I don't even.
but don't own it. Just watch it, because you'll really not care to come back. So there you go.
It's weird that this one's got a soft spot for some folks, though.
Yeah, it was number 7 on Rolling Stone's top Stephen King movies, top 30 Stephen King movies, which is a weird flex, but okay.
I think this is one that people
More power to you, I guess.
saw as children and
Maybe
really
a nostalgia.
resonated.
That has to be it.
And it's sort of, well, I mean, and some of the imagery is arresting. I mean, those corn crucifixes are a thing.
That folklore element's really got some potential to it.
Yeah, if
Some
I'd
legs.
seen this movie as a kid, I think I could see it getting lodged in there
Stick with
pretty
you.
deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, there you go, dear listener. Those are our thoughts on Children of the Corn. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to give to us, Dalton will tell you how to do it.
I'm going to do that right now. You can send your long-form thoughts to goodtrashgenrecast@gmail.com. That's where you can send those. We're not always the best about keeping an eye on it, but, if you got a long thing to say, let us know. Don't go to Facebook ever. If you feel you must go to Twitter, we're at Good Trash Media. You can find links to all the episodes of this show, putting those out as they come out, and links to other fun shows like The Wheel of Randy with Dan Wade. Just had Connor Ratliff on, great episode. And then you can check out The Praise Down with Heath and Alex. Speaking of religious deconstruction and reconstruction, that's kind of what the show's deal still is, but their most recent guest, Lindy Mackey, who I called Lindy Mack last week. My bad, Lindy. Sorry about that. I hadn't actually heard your last name said aloud. They did a two-parter with her. They covered so much ground on, being an ex-evangelical, finding a way to deconstruct your faith upbringing and looking at when do you start to do a reconstruction there. How far can you get into it before you decide to, take a couple steps back and deconstruct? Like the first half of this two-part episode is really great. I think you should check it out. The second half, they really get deep into DC Talks, the early 90s one. I think the one from like 94. It's not the one with Jesus Freak. It's the one before that.
Oh, some of that purity culture stuff.
They get into all, and just like kind of the weird and the weird racism of evangel.
We're just two hunks and a Negro. Right?
Wow. Yeah. I did not know about that track. Yeah. They listened to that one. It's upsetting. So anyway, that's the Praise Down with Heath and Alex. If this
bothered me that I don't know.
If you want more,
Free at Last.
Free at Last. That's the one they talk about. Thank you, Arthur. Oh God!
I think I have a cassette of it somewhere.
They just have it on
the
CD,
audacity of using an MLK sample. Wow. Anyway, there's a lot of gross stuff on that record, and I think I don't know if you grew up in the evangelical tradition. I think you'll get something out of this pair of episodes. Really, if you haven't checked the Praise Down before, great ones to jump in on. That's at the Praise Down on Twitter, and again, we're at Good Trash Media. All the links to the shows already mentioned, you can find them there. What else? The pinned tweet at the Praise Down. If you like it so much, you want to hang out with me or anybody else, join the Discord server. It's fun. I didn't watch Children of the Corn in there. I wasn't going to subject anybody to this. But it's a cool place to hang out. I'm trying to convince Dustin to get on there. Heath and I were conspiring to make you.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, we were conspiring to force you to get in there.
It's just a question of getting around and doing it.
Well, you know how the plan is, right? They got a subscription to Pure Flix. Yeah, they're going to do some Pure Flix watches.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Gnarly.
I had a feeling that'd be the one to get you in. That's all social media that's fit to print, I guess. We'll hold off on the Patreon for this week. We're not making anything right now. Arthur, now that I'm done with that bullshit, what have you got cooking for us in this marathon of yours?
Well, next week, having now met the children, we hope that you continue to enjoy our Welcome to the Family Marathon. And next week, we invite you to commune with us as we celebrate the summer season and discuss Midsummer.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a feeling we were going to get to this one.
Midsummer's got to happen, yeah.
Wow, yeah. Is the director's cut even out there? Was it just a theatrical thing?
You have to watch it on Apple. I think you can buy it on Apple.
But it's still regular, free on Prime if you got Prime, yeah.
Yeah, I think I might go watch that director's cut, though. Well, I guess we'll have to talk about that next week.
So there you go, dear listener. You keep watching, we'll keep talking, and we'll see you all next time.